Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 31st of December. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's take a look at the Western Sources map. You're gonna see there's like icons of air defense systems, and furthermore there are icons of explosions on the south of Ukraine. Furthermore, there is an icon of arrow, of lightning arrow, in the Khmelnytsky district. If we take a look at the Russian sources map, we're gonna see a lot of fire icons in the west part of Ukraine, a lot of icons of fire all over the front lines, and that means that today, during the day, the Russians continues attacking the Ukrainians, towns, energy facilities, industrial facilities of the Ukrainians with missiles. And today there were a lot of waves of attack. First, the Russians started those attacks yesterday in the evening using drones. First, they were trying to spot and to locate the Ukrainian air defense systems, and then the Russians during the day started missiles attacks, and the first wave was up to 50 rockets according to the Ukrainian sources. Then the Russians made another wave of attack with using missiles and more and more. So I believe that today's attack was one of the most powerful and aggressive attacks since the beginning of the special military operation. One of the most interesting situation about those attacks is that the Russians attacked not just the energy facilities, industrial objects, and so on. Today we received a lot of updates about attacking such buildings like hotels, like motels, or to be more precise, the Russians were attacking the places where the foreign forces, foreign engineers, foreign specialists were located. So they were trying to attack and to destroy like some kind of people who supports Western people, Western military people who supports and trains the Ukrainian forces on the ground or something like this. And I believe that all those attacks were pretty successful. I believe that a few days later we are going to receive more updates about the situation. We'll understand exactly what kind of goals and the result the Russians managed to achieve during today's missiles attack. Furthermore, today we received a lot of updates on the ground. And first of all, let's start from the Kupiansk-Liman front line. If we are talking about Kupiansk itself, the Russians attacked the Ukrainians' accumulation of forces in direction of Kislovka-Kotlarovka in this area. As a result of those attacks, the Ukrainians lost around 50 soldiers, something around 5 armored vehicles. So as you can see, not much. This front line is stable without any like movements and so on. If we're when talking about Liman front line today, as you can see, there are a lot of icons in this area, and mainly the Russians were attacking the town by the name of Liman. The Russians were attacking the forest that located between Dibrova and Serebryanka. The Russians were attacking Seversk, and as a result of today's attack, the Ukrainian lost around 140 soldiers and something around 16 armored vehicles. I believe that we need to discuss attack in direction of police office in Liman. It's the place that Ukrainians were using as some kind of headquarters or some kind of deployment place for foreign forces. And there was a lot of videos and pictures, confirmations. The building was completely destroyed. A lot of cars, police cars, and maybe civilian cars were destroyed. So I believe that the Russians haven't provided the number of losses among the Ukrainians or foreign forces, because as far as I understand from the Russians, it was the place of deployment of foreign volunteers or something like this. So as you can see, that attack was pretty successful. If we're when talking about the Seversk and Serebryanka area, the south of Seversky Donetsk River area, the Russians continued their effective counter artillery duels, and as a result of that duel, the Ukrainian lost one Chech howitzer Dana, another M777 howitzer in Seversk. And so as you can see, that duel was pretty successful. And by the way, I would like to add that we can say that today was pretty a lucky day for the Russians, pretty successful day for the Russians. They achieved a lot of success, they achieved a lot of goals, and they managed to destroy a lot of Ukrainian forces, armored vehicles, equipments, and so on. So let's continue. Now we're moving to the area a little bit to the south from Seversk. As you can see, there are also two icons, and the Russians are saying that as a result of clashes and artillery duels for the previous 24 hours, they managed to destroy the radar station of counter-battery warfare in the area of Vysole. And furthermore, they managed to destroy one air defense system S-300 and one howitzer M777. So as you can see, the Ukrainians don't have even the chances in this area, and at least from the Ukrainian side, I believe that they are able to destroy the Russian artillery systems as well. But if we search in internet, we will find less confirmation of that. Now we are moving to Bakhmut, and there are also the Russian continue effective counter-artillery duels, and they destroyed another radar station of counter-battery warfare near Ivanovska in this area, and furthermore they destroyed one howitzer M777 and another HIMARS in the area of Konstantinovka. If when talking about Bakhmut and Klishchiivka, as you can see, there are two icons, and the Russians confirms, or we can say that maybe third or fourth update in a row about the Russian progress in the south of Bakhmut. Today we got this update from another source. Some sources are saying that this update we received from the Wagners on the ground, that they managed to develop their bridgehead in the south of Bakhmut. We discussed this operation for many times, so the Russians continue their offensive operation. And if you remember, I told you that it's highly unlikely that the Russians would be able to establish or develop their bridgehead in south of Bakhmut before taking Klishchiivka. And today we received another confirmation, or the first update, that the Russians managed to enter the central part of Klishchiivka and that Ukrainians were forced to step back in direction of these trenches. So I believe the Russians need another few days to complete the clearing operation of Klishchiivka, and I believe this is going to be a real collapse for the Ukrainians, because from that moment they will be forced to defend themselves inside of towns, along the road rockades and so on, and the Russians will have powerful bridgehead in the south of Bakhmut, and I believe that we can start counting day before the Bakhmut is going to fall. We will come back to Bakhmut one more time. There are a lot of updates about the deployment, about the rotation process, and very important updates, so stay tuned. Now we are moving to Avdiivka. The Russians continue effective counter-artillery duels, and as a result of that duel, the Russians managed to destroy another radar station of counter-battery warfare. All these radars are United States productions, so it's, I believe that I'm not sure about their technical characteristic, if they're so successful, they're so effective, I don't know. But anyway, all three radars, at least by the day, the Russians destroy four radars, or even five, in Chasov Yar, Artemovsk, Avdiivka, Vysole. So the Ukrainians don't have any chances to be effective in artillery duels near Donetsk as well. Furthermore, the Russians managed to shoot down at least 2 helicopters in the area of Pokrovsk. Interesting updates are coming from the south. So if we're talking about Donetsk area and South Donetsk area, about the front line starting from Bakhmut to, let's say, Solidar, Velika Novoselovka, the Ukrainians lost around 130 soldiers and something around 19 armored vehicles. The Ukrainians continue attacking Donetsk and shelling Donetsk. So there were also casualties among civilians. There were a lot of destructions in buildings and so on. And now we are moving to the south, to Zaporozhye area. If you remember, yesterday we discussed the situation in this area, and I told you that the Russians deployed their private PMC Patriot, that according to some sources, this PMC belongs to the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, Shoigu. And today, the president of Russian Federation visited the headquarters, the chief headquarters by the name of South, and this headquarters responsible for the area in the south. He visited, he checked the situation, he discussed the upcoming plans or something like this. Furthermore, according to the Russian sources, he made a video of New Year Eve congratulations that the Russians usually publish 10 minutes before the midnight and something like this. And maybe just to show the progress, maybe just to show the result, he the Russians on the south decided to attack the Dorozhnyanka, the small village on the south of not Ugledar, Gulay Pole, and they got control over this town. But there is one important thing that we need to discuss. If we take a look at the Western sources map, you're gonna see that Dorozhnyanka, the small village that located on the south of Gulay Pole, used to be under Russian control, and the Ukrainians managed to return control over this village in the past, maybe 2 or 3 months, maybe 4 months ago, as a result of their own counteroffensive operation. If we zoom this village, you're going to see that there are just 2 streets, so it's not even so important. Of course, the Russians got closer to Gulay Pole. Maybe now they are able to establish some control. Who knows? There are more interesting updates. For example, today, during the day, the Western sources map were published some icons of like track, showing that a lot of convoys, a lot of forces are heading in direction of Zaporozhye. Furthermore, during the day, at least I saw a lot of video and photo confirmation of convoys of armored vehicles, tanks, trucks, artillery systems that were heading in direction of Zaporozhye. They were moving through Rostov-na-Donu, Mariupol. So maybe the Russians are planning to start offensive operation in the south of Zaporozhye. Furthermore, today, during the day, in the morning, the Minister of Defense of Ukraine published his own video. He was sending his message to the civilians, to the people of Russian Federation. He was trying to talk with them, and he told the people of Russian Federation about upcoming events on the territory of Ukraine and so on. And he said that somewhere in the beginning of January, the Russians, Vladimir Putin to be more precise, are planning to close the border of Russian Federation, to announce about war situation in the territory of Russian Federation. He is planning to start the global massive mobilization. It was his words, the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, and if we're talking about all this situation, about massive attack of Ukraine for more than 4 or 5 days in a row, when talking about storming of Bakhmut, when talking about some activation in Zaporozhye area, when talking about some activation in the territory of Belarus, or when we calculate all these things, I believe that maybe he's right, because he was talking like a person who believes his words, who knows what he says. And furthermore, he says one important thing, that he's like betting, and he bet with his reputation. So it's like it's like as must that is going to happen about the upcoming Russian offensive operation, about upcoming mobilization, global mobilization in Russian Federation, and so on. So we'll see what is going to be. Now let's talk about some deployments update. There are a lot of updates on the front lines. And the first update in the first piece of update we received from Avdiivka front line. During the previous days, the Ukrainians deployed 36 Marine Corps brigade in the area of Avdiivka, and as you can see, day by day, month by month, the Ukrainians decided to reinforce this area, reinforce Avdiivka. They deployed another brigade. If we take a look at this map, you're gonna see that during December, the Ukrainians deployed 3rd Tank Brigade. During these days, they deployed 36 Marine Corps. Also in December, they deployed 35th Marine Corps. In December, they deployed the 59th Motorized Brigade. So as you can see, they have completed the rotation process. They have completed the reinforcement, and as you can see, this reinforcement, this rotation, gave some result, because the Russians stuck in Peski, in Oputne, and Vadiane, and I believe that they stopped, at least they slowed down, and for now the Russians are not able to continue offensive operation in Peski. They stuck in Pervomaisk, in Vadiane, and for now they can't do anything with this. Maybe the Russians just change their focus on Bakhmut, maybe, who knows, but at least if we're talking about the situation on the ground, we see that the Ukrainians completed the rotation process, and we see that the Russians have completely stopped in this area. When talking about Bakhmut, there are a lot of updates as well. First of all, let's start with the Kurdumovka. This is our Kurdumovka, and the Ukrainians deployed 3rd Assault Brigade Azov. It's Assault Brigade, and very interesting on the 29th of December, and very interesting updates we received with this deployment. First of all, as you can see, the deployment map has been updated. Now this shows that Ukrainians managed to enter the north part of Kurdumovka. So the Russians attacked from Avdiivka and Klishchiivka in the south of Bakhmut, but the Ukrainians made a very effective counter-offensive operation in the direction of Kurdumovka, and they managed to return control over the north part of this town. I can't tell you for sure if this information is real, because the Russians didn't provide any update about the situation. There are no icons about this and so on, but I believe, if, as you can see, according to the Russian sources map, they have their bridgehead very far to the Klishchiivka, so I can't tell you exactly. We'll follow this situation, because if the Ukrainians did really this operation, I believe that they did a very nice job, because they attacked right in the flank, and they reduced the power and the pressure and the force of Russians in the area of Klishchiivka, because from Andreevka they attacked Klishchiivka, and meanwhile a little bit to the south they lost their main base in Kurdumovka. This is a very important update. If it's true, I believe that the next days we're going to receive this information or some kind of confirmation. Another important situation we can find near Solidar. The Ukrainians deployed their 17th Tank Brigade, and I believe that they were forced to do this because, as you can see, near Yakovlevka, the Russians developed their bridgehead. They managed to establish control over the vicinity of this town, and they continue moving in the direction of this small village Razdolovka, Veselovka. So the Ukrainians were forced to deploy their 17th Tank Brigade just one purpose: to attack the Russians in the distance, to slow down them. And from one side it's a very nice decision, because now they are able to stop them in distance, but from the other side, maybe this 17th Tank Brigade needed somewhere else, let's say in Zaporozhye area, and from now on the Ukrainians are not able to deploy. If they redeploy this brigade, that means that they're going to lose some territories near Solidar and so on. Another interesting updates are coming from Bakhmut itself. The Ukrainians deployed 127th Defense Brigade in this area just to reinforce this area, to make situation stable, more safe in Bakhmut. It's a very big brigade, completely consists of territorial defense forces, so there are a lot of big number of forces, and their main job is just to stand in buildings, stand in trenches, and not to allow the Russians to cross them easily. Furthermore, near Kurdumovka, the Ukrainians deployed 62nd Mechanized Brigades, a very fresh update. And one more time, these two deployment of 3rd Assault Brigade Azov and 62nd Mechanized Brigade led to the situation when, according to the Western sources, the Russians were forced to step back from the north part of Kurdumovka. Another important updates are coming from Liman. I believe that Ukraine still plans to attack Kremina, to storm. The previous brigade that were located in this area made the main job. They cleared the forest between Seversky Donetsk and Kremina Dibrova towns. These forests, Kuzmina, this area, they cleared this area. They established real fire control, physical control. The previous brigade did their job, and they left this territory. And the Ukrainians deployed 15th Slaviansk Regiment, National Guard, and I believe that their main job will be to complete operation in Dibrova and Kuzmina and to prepare everything for storming Kremina. Furthermore, the Ukrainians deployed 140th Intelligence Battalion in Yampol, near Yampol, with the same purpose, just to understand the situation, just to find out what's going on, to understand everything, and maybe they are planning to make something interesting in Kremina as well. And another important update are coming from the north of Ukraine, from the border with the Russian Federation. The Ukrainians deployed 67th Mechanized Brigade Duke. So maybe soon we are going to see some kind of rotation between 14th Mechanized Brigade or 92nd Mechanized Brigade, because this brigade were deployed in this area a very long time ago, and they're completely out of everything, because the Russians managed to reduce them heavily during the days. So maybe the Ukrainians will decide to make some kind of rotation, and they will move these forces from the front line, and they will replace them with 67th Mechanized Brigade. Who knows? From one side, of course, we can say that Ukrainians managed to slow down the Russians. They managed to complete rotation process. They managed to stop the progress of the Russians near Bakhmut and so on. But I have a question: how long the Ukrainians are able to do this? Because as you can see, in the beginning of December, the Ukrainians made another rotation in Bakhmut. And in a month, they were forced to make another rotation. So we understand the real clashes there, the real losses from the Ukrainian side there. So as you can see, they are forced to make rotation very, very fast. Less than in a month, less than 3 weeks, the Ukrainians were forced to move some brigades from the front line and to move another one. And I'm not sure that those brigades that Ukrainians were forced to move from Bakhmut, they will be able to restore their manpower, their power in the next 3 weeks. I believe it will take months because there are no mobilization process in Ukraine right now. They're planning to start one, but there are no right now. So where are they planning to take reserves? Where they need to train forces. They can't take forces from the street to give them machine gun and to put them in this or that brigade. They need to train these people. The same situation near Avdiivka. Yes, the Ukrainians managed to stop the Russian progress in Pervomaisk, in Pesk, in Opatna on this front line. They managed to stop their progress in Verkhnyokamyansk by deploying. But when talking about this front line, we see the same picture. Less than in a month, the Ukrainians were forced to make another rotation process on this front line. So, and how long they are able to do this? Because when talking about the Russians, they just have completed the training process of newly mobilized forces, and they have reserves, they have everything they need. There is ongoing process of recruiting ex-prisoners or prisoners from Russian prisons and so on. When talking about Wagner, some sources are saying that during the autumn, they managed to mobilize around 20-25,000 prisoners. And when talking about the Russians, they have around 1 million prisoners in the entire Russian Federation. So they have it was some kind of, when talking about Wagner's prisoners, it was some kind of, if you want, you can join. But believe me, at some point of time of this war, there will be no if you want. Everybody from prisoners will be mobilized on the purposes of this war. Everybody. Of course, it will be like a process, like step by step. But there is 1 million men who is sitting in the prisoners, like healthy guys who know what they did. They were prisoners, they were killers, rapers, thieves. So it's not something new for them. And they will be pushed to join the army anyway. It is going to happen. There are very heavy clashes in Marinka, but situation in Marinka slowed down as well. And I'll repeat one more time. Very interesting situation in Zaporozhye. Very interesting situation with all this, some activation in near Gulay Pole, with all these pictures with the convoys of tanks, of artillery systems, and so on. And the most important is the information that we received from the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, who told us that in the beginning of January, the Russians are planning to start global mobilization, and they start to fight this war as a real war, but not like games that we used to see before these days. And that's it for today. I congratulate you on the upcoming year 2023. I wish you all the best, health to you and your families. Bye bye.